and Sustainability Commission meeting on the afternoon of May 14th, 2019. Our agenda today will begin with items of interest from commissioners, consent agenda that includes the minutes from our April 30th meeting, and the exciting portion of the agenda, we will get to introduce our new BPS director. And finally, we will have a briefing on Smart City PDX privacy and information protection resolution, which I'm sure will also be exciting. Items of interest. Ben.
I recently attended, actually last week, the Urbanism Next second annual conference here in Portland. Well, I think it was very interesting. It's something that really focuses on kind of technology and innovation, the autonomous vehicles, sharing economy, e-commerce. And I think it's really great to have a venue like this that talks about these topics in a very informative way here in town. So this is the second annual, hopefully one of many. Just a thought, someone said, it would have been probably a very different outcome if we sat down and really tried to figure out what the outcome of technology was at the onset of the implementation of the car. Mm-hmm. Maybe we would have done things differently. So this is our second chance to get it done right. So a lot of interesting topics. I'm not going to mention them all, but I guess one really thing that stuck with me was the concept of the mobility as a service. There were a lot of conversations about that. So the acronym MAAS, you probably hear a lot, if you haven't already, about that in the future. And it's basically the idea of really integrating different transportation and transit platforms into one and really provide a much more integrated type of service. So very interesting and very good venue.
Thank you. Other items of interest? All right, I have one. Last week I attended the kickoff meeting of the West Portland Town Center Advisory Committee. That's the planning process that will do land use for the station area that will hopefully be on a light rail line sometime in the next decade. Very good group, very engaged. I'm serving as your liaison to that group. Not a lot of substance yet, but we're getting things moving. All right, if there are no other items of interest, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Jeff?
Second.
Mike? All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that's adopted. All right, we have a signal event here today that it has not happened within the term of service of anyone on this commission. I now have the distinction of being the longest serving commissioner and have the receding hairline to prove it. And all that time I have served under one director, Susan Anderson. And I think that's a testament to Susan and her longevity and success. And I hope we will have a similar run from our new director. For those of you who don't know Andrea Durbin most recently served as the executive director of the Oregon Environmental Council. In the past, she's had roles at Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth, and I like her because she's a bicycle commuter. Andrea.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today, and I know a couple of you from work in the past and look forward to working with all of you. So I'm on the job now for just over 3 weeks, and it's been certainly drinking from a fire hose. Bureau of Planning and Sustainability is involved, as you all know very well, in a lot of things. And so it's been great to really dive in and meet with the staff, meet with the teams, meet with the other bureaus to learn a little bit more about that work and some of our goals and missions and plans moving forward, which I look forward to working with all of you on. I'm really just impressed by the caliber of the staff at BPS. And Ben and I were just talking about how fortunate we are that we have such an incredible group of experts in their fields who are doing really phenomenal work and very committed to the mission and core work of BPS. So for that, I'm really grateful and really excited to work with all of them and support them in their work, and really to work with all of you and support you in this work as well. So I was talking to Katie coming in. The role of the commissioners on the Planning and Sustainability Commission is a significant one. You all work, as you know, very hard and are asked to really dive in and do a lot. And I just really have a tremendous amount of respect for that commitment that you are making, and commitment to kind of the future of our city and what our city is going to look like, and who we're going to be in the coming decades. So. A little bit about myself. As Chris mentioned, I'm most recently just coming from the Oregon Environmental Council, where I was executive director there for the past 12 years, leading in a great team, doing work mostly at the state level, but also at the city level. Before that, I worked in Brussels, Belgium. I was in Europe, and then I worked in Washington, D.C., mostly working on environmental policy making, sustainability related issues. One thing that's really inspired me to be interested in this position is really the intersection of the mission of planning and sustainability. I think, unusual that cities combine that, but I think the fact that Portland had the foresight to do so and really try to combine and integrate those goals is really important for creating kind of the city that we want in terms of being a healthy, equitable, more resilient city, and one that's reflective of adapting to the changing nature that we're experiencing in Portland, and trying to get out ahead of some of that. So I'm in my personal time, I also serve as a board member of Join, working on homelessness issues. I'm a vice chair of Join. And so it really kind of marries my interests in looking at housing and housing affordability issues as well. And as you all know, there's a lot of opportunity there. We'll be doing some of that work together, continue to do that, and moving forward. And so it's really kind of a great opportunity, I think, to combine some of my personal interests and help really build up the phenomenal leadership of Susan Anderson and the staff to really help this bureau play the connecting collaborative role. It's a role that I have played in my work, has been a very collaborative, partner-oriented, and I think that BPS really plays that role within the city of Portland. And I look forward to working very closely with the other bureau directors and leadership across the city to kind of help build the kind of city we all want to see for us, which is one that protects kind of the core values that we love about being in Portland, but also one that allows more opportunities for everyone to have a place in the city and have opportunities. So I look forward to getting to know all of you. Julie will be scheduling meetings for us to meet in the coming weeks, and I look forward to hearing more from each of you about your interests and ways, what you want to see, and look forward to partnering together. Happy to take any questions you have.
Anyone have questions for Andrea?
So what were you doing in Brussels?
Good question. I had my own consulting business there, and I was working with international banks, helping to establish environmental and social standards and around their lending practices. And so a lot of the clients that I was working with were European based. My husband had the job that actually took us to Brussels, so I was kind of flexible. I could do that work from different places. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, and I'm sure we all look forward to working with you.
Yeah. And I do have a couple of executive director report items to share. One, that we are working on the PSC retreat for July 23rd. I think that should all be on your calendars. Julie will be sending out more details as we confirm them. We will also next week the City Council will look at our proposed new 3 PSC members, and they will consider and hopefully adopt those recommendations. And then they will also reappoint Eli and Katie. So thank you both for being willing to serve another term. And there is no meeting on May 28th. So enjoy the break. We will resume on June 11th with our new members joining.
Great, thank you. All right, and our remaining agenda item is the Smart City PDX Privacy and Information Protection Resolution. Do we have the staff for that here, or do we need to round them up? Okay, we'll be in recess for 5 minutes while we go Shanghai the staff.
So what are you hearing about RIP at City Hall? I said, what are you hearing about RIP at City Hall?
Yeah, I went last year. Did you go this year? Yeah. Time with some family stuff right now, so I wasn't able to go this year.
So the spring term goes June 14th.
So I pushed back as fast as I can.
Big project.
And also since the
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, for sure, even though you're really super busy and everything.
my anxiety is that
Regulate. Yeah. What are we going to be allowed to regulate?
September rolling into that some parts of it. Good things.
Wouldn't it be cool if you could get the banks to actually
Haven't happened during election season or mayor's running. It's like so easy just to say we already create all this housing. So I have anxiety that on the floor.
Oh, you were? Oh, okay. Cool.
So,
I think it's a really good thing. The organized support rip. Stretching them out for 6 months.
Planning Commission Chair.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay, folks. All right, we're reconvening the Planning and Sustainability Commission meeting on May 14th, 2019. And next up is the Smart City PDX Privacy and Information Protection Briefing.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Christine Kendrick. I'm the Smart City PDX Coordinator for the City of Portland with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I'm here with my colleague, Hector Dominguez, the Open Data Coordinator. Today, we're going to give a brief overview of the Smart City PDX program and then also introduce the City of Portland Privacy and Information Protection Principles, which we're bringing to Council next Wednesday on May 22nd. So Smart City PDX is a citywide program that we coordinate on behalf of the Mayor's Office out of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. But what does smart cities really mean? If you've heard of this term, you might think of lots of sensors, lots of connected technology, communication solutions, maybe even kiosks in roadways. But we recognize that smart cities is not a term that we got to coin ourselves, nor probably was coined by any public sector agency or community group. So what we tried to do with Smart City PDX is actually redefine what smart cities means for the city of Portland. So we see it as the integration of human, physical and digital systems, and really trying to bring those systems together to support communities to be more livable, resilient, and prosperous. So our program focuses on figuring out how to use innovative technology and information management to actually solve problems that are identified by communities. We also see better data management and data analysis as central to our work. Data is really an asset that needs to be managed. And then we also recognize that city infrastructure, the public right-of-way, is really increasing in value. So how do we make sure that we leverage those types of assets as a community resource to solve problems? We also acknowledge that a lot of the problems that we want to address with Smart City PDX programs and projects are really already defined in a lot of our plans. So we're not trying to create a separate Smart Cities plan. We're really trying to create a foundation of improved use of technology, improved information management, to support these existing city goals that have been produced through a lot of our processes, the comp plan, digital equity action plan, our climate action plan, and transportation system plan. Last, I want to note that we really recognize and think that it's really important to recognize this, that the opportunities from a lot of the advancements in technology that are happening right now, a lot of the advancements from the increase in data collection efforts that are happening in the city and across communities are not going to be accessible by all. And really, they actually might cause new harms or make existing harms even worse for marginalized communities. So in June of 2018, City Council adopted what we call the Smart City PDX Priorities Framework. This really established a goal and some process and criteria for making sure that we uphold and center our work on equity. The Priorities Framework was a product of the Smart Cities Steering Committee, which we coordinate on behalf, again, of the mayor's office. It has 14 different agencies and bureaus involved and all of commissioners' offices. And when we look at this framework, it not only establishes our goal, but it really helps us to start to filter through a lot of the different opportunities that come to the doorsteps of the city, make sure that we're choosing projects and policies based on our equity goals, and then also being efficient with our limited resources that we have. So with that, that's an overview of Smart City PDX. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague to talk about some of our other foundational work, open data, and these coming privacy principles.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Hector Dominguez. I am the Open Data Coordinator for the Open Data is a citywide program. It's part of the Smart City PDX, and we are part of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. In 2017, there was approved by City Council this Open Data Ordinance that encourages the city to proactively publish information in the sake for transparency and more accountability in the city. Part of that work also resides on this directive of developing a data governance strategy. And as part of the development of open data, one of the first tasks that we found was that we really needed to understand what was open and what was protected or needed to be kept private. And so we started working on big umbrella privacy principles that could be assimilated and transferred throughout all the services that the city has, and also how the city works with third parties in doing businesses and exchanging data and information with both private community-based organizations, but also other jurisdictions, so the city can still develop their businesses. We have those principles developed, and as Christine mentioned, we have a time certain on May 22nd, so next week at 10:25 p.m. So privacy is really one of those foundational stones for this new age of information and technology. When we are facing on big data and in our society, so our lives are actually represented more and more in a digital fashion. And because of that, the city services need to evolve. However, there is a big responsibility. We all are aware of big issues around data breaches, abuses of data and information, many of those coming from the private sector. But the government also has a lot of responsibility on how we can improve that, and also implement best practices on how we are doing it. So we started working on that about last year. So it's been a whole year of work. And at the same time, our Office of Equity and Human Rights was also assigned the task to work on the impacts on vulnerable communities and how privacy was a factor on all that. And we started working together around May last year. We took a lot of inspiration and information from the work that Europe was doing or is doing around the General Data Protection Regulation. We look into that. They have a set of privacy rights. We started with that. However, as we kept evolving this work, one of the recommendations that we got from the city attorneys is that we should stick with principles because rights imply something legally binding. and it's a longer journey. So principles is actually something that they recommended as a first step, and also a strategic to start all these kind of conversations throughout the city. So this after some work that involve external experts from other cities, particularly the cities of Oakland and Seattle, experts inside the city, and we have worked very closely with our Office of Equity and Human Rights, our Office of Information Security, City Attorney's Office, Office of Community Technology, Mayor's Office, and our group, Smart City PDX, to put together these 7 principles that you can see here. They are big umbrella principles, as I mentioned: transparency and accountability, full life cycle stewardship, data openness, data utility, equitable data management, ethical and non-discriminatory use of data, and automated decision systems. So that's the general journey. As I mentioned, it's about the real work started about a year ago, and it involved also a couple of community events, one back in November and the other one in January this year, where we presented the principles. We heard back from those people who participated on those events, also through briefings, through different agencies in the city. We actually had about 30 plus agencies here and about 140 plus people that have been attending those briefings, and we heard back from everybody, literally, from police, our BTS, our bureau, city attorneys, transportation, emergency management, everybody in the city. So we are feeling very proud about that. So next steps. So this work actually goes in parallel with the other work around data governance that we are actually starting after all this. So privacy has been our like presentation for all this discussion, but really, in order to implement all these privacy principles, we need an authority body that currently is missing in the city, which is represented as the data governance structure. So that's something that we already started, and we are going to have a kickoff meeting on June 6th with a group of let's say, stakeholders that are already working on data governance in different bureaus, so we can coordinate internally in the city and put together a plan for the whole city as well. At the same time, we're also working in the region, trying to promote all these principles. We have an open data regional work group that includes Multnomah County, at this point, Multnomah County, Metro, the city of Hillsborough, the city of Gresham, and ourselves. And well, with that, so I'll let Christine to finish.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to also emphasize looking ahead of the work of figuring out how to implement the privacy principles, not only in the data governance work, but really, again, still stressing how to have community involvement as we figure out data governance. We got so much great feedback through our events with the privacy principles, and we recognize that the rapid paces of change in technology, data collection efforts, those risks and burdens and benefits are also going to change quickly for different communities. So figuring out how to have a lot of continuous conversation, almost very adaptable, agile conversations is going to be something that we would like to figure out as well over the next year of implementing this work.
Okay, questions? I have a few, but I'll let other commissioners go first.
Can you give some examples? This is Eli Spivak, of what, how this intersects with this bureau, a little bit more specifically, the data that, I mean, either in terms of getting public input or, public information on new projects, or the way people give testimony and what people can read. Like, those are the areas I've sort of intersected with data, but I don't know in this project how it relates to those or not.
Oh, completely. I mean, you have mentioned a couple of those, but I mean, this is considering that this is a citywide program, it really intersects with every single bureau. Particularly with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, we have been reviewing how the Bureau collects data on energy, for instance, on all the energy inventories, for all this for due to mandate or just as a strategic information. And and yeah, well, these conversations are actually, this particular program, we have been working very closely in terms of use cases with the Bureau of, with people, basically. And and that's because they are one of the main sponsors for a lot of the digital infrastructure that we are testing right now. Let's say Smart Cities is also coordinating our Portland Urban Data Lake. So the data lake is this strategic asset that we are developing right now around like procedures and how we are going to use it. We are understanding what cloud services mean, and privacy is definitely, all these go together. All these digital services go together, including privacy. I don't know if I answered the question, but in general.
So I could take a use case maybe as an illustration. Current topic is scooter trips, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the city is going to get a lot of data about where people are using scooters because we want to know how maybe it's replacing other transportation modes, how it's affecting sidewalks. But if we have a big database of scooter trips, we make it public. Trips that end in front of a single family home, maybe you can de-anonymize that and figure out who took the scooter trip, right? So what kind of protections are you building in for those kind of situations?
So that work is specifically led by PBET. We are providing technical support for that and understanding how to look at a mobility data standard, and making sure that we think about these questions ahead of time so that we're not just relying on the de-anonymization afterwards. Are there ways that we can aggregate before we even get that data so that we're not looking at individual origin and destination? We're at least coming up to block level, census block, or neighborhood. So we get the information that we need at a higher resolution. But yes, so putting that into place. And I think also there's going to be constantly a tension between privacy and transparency and open data. And so that is going to be a continual struggle and how to apply it on each individual project. But that's why the principles are kind of a guiding starting place to understand how to make some of those decisions.
Yeah, I would like to add to that is that as part of this resolution, so the next steps are actually they are giving a directive to BPS, particularly our group, in coordination with BTS and our Office of Equity and Human Rights, to try to see what are the next steps, how we can actually, what is the best fit for the city of Portland to create a body that looks into privacy issues. At this point, everything is being reactive, as you mentioned. So we have the scooters all over the city, and they're coming in 2 months, and it's been a reactive function. And as this work is being moving forward, I've been getting personal requests to review surveys, to review permits, to review how public records actually needs to deliver some of that information, what needs to be redacted. And we are actually providing those services. However, it's in a reactive form and not more in a structural way. So the next steps is actually find out what is the best fit for doing that in a structural way.
I could shift a little bit. Ben, did you have?
No, go ahead.
Shift a little bit to privacy rights, which is a topic you touched on.
Yeah.
In my day job, I've had the experience of getting a Fortune 500 website ready for GDPR. So learned quite a bit in the last couple of years about that. So, some of the key principles are that individuals have the right to know what an entity knows about them, to correct it, to control how it's used. In my world, that says, we can't email to somebody unless we have their permission to do so. You've made it clear you're not trying to do that yet, but California has adopted something very much like GDPR. I've heard talk in the Oregon legislature of thoughts about doing something similar. What's the city doing to get ready for the next step?
So as I mentioned, Poodle is this infrastructure that is allowing us to try to innovate in all those different services. So we at this point we are actually working with our Bureau of Information Security or Information Security Office for actually trying to promote those kind of services in what's the next generation of services. At this point, everything is in a pilot fashion, but we are definitely looking at GDPR-like guidelines as a best practices, and that's what we are intending to go definitely. So in GDPR, GDPR is actually designed for consumer data. It's actually government data is exempt for all that. However, still we are looking into that as best practices.
Okay, I had Ben and then Daisy.
Somewhat connected to this, I mean, I'm sure you'll get a lot of questions about privacy issues. Under data utility, under the heading of data utility, under principles, it says that the city will collect only the minimum amount of personal information to fulfill a well-defined purpose, which sounds great and good, and I agree with that in general, but it's also very subjective. The interpretation of it would be very subjective, and I understand there's a lot of next steps, and some of those are probably going to address that. But is there perhaps a way to be a lot more substantial and really clear about that, and then perhaps maybe adding what that well-defined means, perhaps in the definitions?
Yes, and actually that this also understanding these are only guidelines for all the bureaus, right? So what utility means for different bureaus is completely different to what other bureaus are going to understand as utility. So we are leaving that open for internal procedures to be developed in each bureau to define what that utility value is. Some other cities, for instance, both the city of Seattle and Oakland, which I mentioned, we are working very closely together. They have actually procedures to do privacy impact assessments in general. The city of Oakland, particularly, they have a procedure for surveillance technology. The city of Seattle, they have a chief privacy officer, and they can actually provide a service at all these different particular services and data management features or modules that they have as a city for their departments over there. So it's a different approach, and we are looking into what's the best. Yeah, yeah. And that also along the lines of transparency.
I would also add to that answer that in forming kind of the data governance structure, what are those roles of data stewards across bureaus? And as each bureau would develop their own policies, we would have a lot more education about what's in our admin roles. What are things that, no matter what, have to be part of public records requests? So then you should think about that before designing a study or some type of survey to collect data, to think about that data utility. So we'll try to identify what can be citywide versus what each bureau needs to define in more detail.
Hi. So you mentioned you were advised to go the resolution route instead of the rights route. I'm just wondering if there's an individual or a group that finds that their data has been misused somehow. What is their recourse under a resolution?
That's a good question. I mean, definitely there has been some complaints about how data has been is being published by the city. And there are some misalignments, I would say. For instance, one of the most sensitive data or pieces of information that the city manages is homeless camps data. So our Fire and Rescue Bureau, they manage that information, everything that has to do with any service that they provide as first responders of, like if there is a medical emergency there or there is a fire reported there, most of that information is kept private, set as sensitive, and not published by default. However, our cleaning services, when there is a homeless camp cleaning, everything gets published. So when that happened, where that happened, and there has been some complaints about that. and part of this effort is actually create a way to support how the city in general publishes and manages that kind of sensitive information. Mhm.
Eli?
Sorry. So I'm thinking of some things. The interaction I have most often with the city website is Portland Maps, which has a wealth of information. And I could think of two things that are not on Portland Maps right now that would be sort of a delicate question of whether they got added. One is energy performance or home energy scores as homes turnover. I don't think that's on there right now. Could be added. Could be informational if you're looking for a home. What was the score last time it was checked? Um, the rental registry, if that gets going, is that public information? I'm not sure if it is, but I'm just wondering how would the city process? I mean, I'm not tossing these out as like proposals, but they both seem like potentially sensitive items. Um, what's the process for the city to decide whether those things get shared and how? Is that what you're kind of creating here? And if so, maybe describe like just those two examples. How would it flow, or is that still being figured out?
Yeah, at this point, the implemented way of getting that information, well, could be through any of the open data portals, or like Portland Maps is one of those. You can get access to all that information, and there is. Relatively speaking, there is some control from our corporate GIS team on what gets published and what is not published, right? So there is some control there. Or another way in which users or people can get access to data is through public record requests. So public record request is subject to all the public records laws and what needs to be redacted in case of being said as sensitive or private. However, something, all these different services are at this point, they are completely separated from one another. And there is no unified way in which we can understand what the city has. And that's also one of the main motivations why we need a data governance structure, because that will actually define what's the best way in which we can create data inventories, which is the first step to understand how we can protect data is understanding what need to be protected, right? What is there and what kind of assets the city has. And then it's answer the question how we're going to protect that and who is going to protect that and how we are going to make that accountable and so on, right? But we need the data governance piece in order to define all that. And that's why that's our next priority.
So if I understand that right, if it's not quite set up yet, but in theory, at various times we've recommended that certain pieces of data be visible on Portland Maps website. Or for example, we had a code project recently about notifying potential new development, and we thought, well, it'd be great if people could see what's being proposed in their neighborhood.
Mhm.
So is the idea that if we propose something, or staff suggested it, that it would go through some screen, sort of like doing it would go through some organizational screen to figure out whether it is appropriate and at what level of detail it is, and that doesn't yet exist in any centralized way, but you're proposing to centralize it?
So
Is that
corporate CDS does have right now protocols, and they're going to look at admin rules, some of our cybersecurity measures that are in place. So that kind of also answers your question. There are some things for recourse that are existing. What's kind of missing right now is an additional extra privacy lens. How are we trying to keep track of things that might be released in different processes? And we don't realize that when you combine them, could reveal some type of information. So I think what would be added to the existing work that BTS does right now to make sure before something is ready to go and doesn't have confidential information before it's on Portland Maps would be an additional privacy lens, some type of risk assessment, and that would be created through the data governance structure and team, what those processes should look like.
So what does the data governance decision-making process look like?
That's what's coming next. So that kickoff meeting, at first it's just an analysis and planning team. So Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, BTS Technology Services, Transportation, Environmental Services, City Budget Office, and Portland Police Bureau. As Hector mentioned, a lot of those bureaus have a little bit more mature or ongoing data governance internal processes, and so figuring out how to put those to a citywide structure. That would then make a recommendation for a larger executive kind of charter and steering committee that would be citywide. And then there's a lot of different structures in place after that.
Great. Katie?
Yes. Um, it sounds like you're involved in some pretty important work, and that this is the city of Portland is really going to get a lot of value out of what you're setting up, because it sounds like we had a big hole there where we needed some work done. So I applaud that. I'm just kind of curious, what other kind of projects is Smart City working on? And I know for me, I tend to think of um, like new technology just kind of comes in and just it comes into the city and it kind of takes over, and it's fast, and all of a sudden everybody's using a smartphone, or all of a sudden everybody's jumping in an Uber. And what kinds are you doing anything with new technologies and that sort of thing?
Sure, I can kind of give a probably quick brief overview of some of the projects that we work on. So open data is a very strong project citywide. The data governance will be a big focus of our work. We also coordinate the Smart City Steering Committee, which really gets a lot of bureaus to work together. So trying to figure out points of collaboration across bureaus on projects, which we do a lot of support for the Digital Equity Action Plan and are active with the Digital Inclusion Network. We'll be supporting some of the kind of census work if we can. We also have the Puddle, which is the Portland Urban Data Lake, and that is really a large, and again, multi-bureau project, multiple regional partners, and Portland State's involved as well. And that's really trying to build a platform to enable data-driven decision making. We have some use cases around bus arrival time. Also, the scooter data will eventually go into the Puddle system as well. And not only those specific use cases we're testing out, but it's actually also creating a new type of project for the city to try creating a full data pipeline from when you ingest potentially real-time data, not static, how you manage it, how you clean it, how you are a good steward of it, all the way to data analysis. So there's a lot of components, and that's a really large project. We also have, this is led BPS, an air quality sensor testing project. So understanding again how well we can try out some of these new technologies and take the data in and communicate it. And then one other project I'll mention is the Prep Hub project. That's in partnership with Portland State University and MIT's Risk Lab. And that's actually trying to create some new types of infrastructure in neighborhoods to increase awareness about disaster resiliency, and also create a center during a disaster event with some radio communication technology, charging ability. So it's a wide variety. I'll also mention we are looking at to start a new project to also make sure that when we are deciding about new projects coming up, how do we make sure that we're working with needs that are identified by communities? So how do we incorporate more feedback to decide what's coming next, what we should focus on? And so we're looking at trying to have a new kind of equity advisor consultant community model over the next year as well to help inform those project decisions.
Thank you. That's really interesting. What I was thinking of when I asked that question was the fact that there's going to be a lot of changes when cars are self-driving. And I've read some articles, and they sound like it's just going to be wonderful, and everyone will pile into the cars, and it'll reduce congestion. And then other articles are like the exact opposite. And so, as a planning and sustainability commission person, I kind of wonder, well, which way is it going to be, and which way should we be moving? You know, and is that going to anything like that going to be part of your, or is that something like, well, good luck figuring it out, or are you guys going to be weighing in on that?
Yes, and we work with PBOT quite a bit, and PBOT has led the Smart Autonomous Vehicle Initiative. So how do you have some proactive policy about those changes? How can we still have our values about land use and shared vehicles and reducing VMT with new technologies? So we support PBOT on a lot of those projects. I also forgot to mention the traffic safety sensor project, and so with AVs or what other type of new technologies are to come in the right of way, that's a lot more infrastructure on our actual vertical infrastructure, the poles owned by the city. That's a lot more data flowing back and forth. So we do a lot of support work in what does that look like? How do we make sure we have space for things that the city might need to put there and redesign those poles? And also supporting some of the technical and data work with the scooters as well. But some of those are PBOT led, and we help support.
And I would like to add and highlight that one of the main products I think from my perspective that the Smart City has is actually the our priorities framework, which is actually is putting equity as the center point for how technology has to be deployed and used throughout the city. So we are, through that lens, we are actually trying to develop policies. We are trying to develop all these guidelines, so other parts in the city, other bureaus can follow along. And just quickly mention, smart cities was a term actually crafted by the private sector as a way to sell stuff to cities and government. We are trying to reclaim that. We are trying to reclaim it and transform it in the way that is actually working for cities.
Mike?
Yeah, my issue isn't related to privacy. I've been frustrated over many years, both at Metro and City of Portland and elsewhere. Every time we bring up, and this is data related, interest in developing um, uh, indicators for ecological health, for example. And I'm wondering if through this project, since you're interacting with other cities, Seattle, I know they have the green factor up there, and Oakland and other cities, whether there may be an ancillary product that comes out of this where there may be opportunities for collecting some of that data that we always say we either don't have or we don't have the capacity to collect data around environmental health issues.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of ecological, not energy efficiency and so forth.
No, thank you for asking that, actually. This presentation was focused on privacy. However, from the open data perspective, we had three buckets of in which we are focusing all these our efforts. One is public record request as a way to create value in the city. The second is through specific use cases where they need better data management along those lines. Privacy could be one of those. And the third one is actually those key performance indicators for the city. And through those key performance indicators, it's just how the city is, we can understand how the city in general is doing. And those indicators are actually defined by every bureau defines their own indicator. And the way in which we try to promote efficiency is try to create those pipelines so we can get those indicators in a more trusted and efficient way. And those can be just evolving and be redefined as we need as we move forward towards those moonshot goals that we have.
Okay. One item I want to call out, the policy about using an equity lens on automated decision systems. I thought that was very innovative and very much in line with our values and not something I've seen elsewhere. So I want to compliment you on that. I don't see any more questions. Is there interest in having the commission send a letter of support for this? I see some heads nodding. Are there particular sentiments we'd want to include in that letter? I'm thinking perhaps along the lines of the additional steps that need to happen after this around privacy. This is a good first start, but there's a lot more to do. Does that resonate for people?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Any other parting thoughts? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the commission is adjourned. Thank you.